You are listening to the Pro-Black Perspective on KWAZ Radio. Welcome to the Pro-Black Perspective, where black problems are addressed with black solutions. Your host tonight is the author of the Pro-Black Compendium and Zuberi and the Maroons of Maa, the Pan-African Nationalist, Oni. Oni, what are we discussing tonight?
Organize, technologize, and strategize against Africa's invaders. This mantra remains the most serious that you will hear but not listen to. How many can say that they are organizing against Africa's invaders? How many can say that they are technologizing? How many can say that they are strategizing? The trouble is that the answer remains not enough. Today we will read from Zuberi and the Maroons of Maa, the first book that I have written, and you'll read chapter 2. The name Xavier Parker should come to your mind. This was a 13-year-old boy who was kidnapped on his way home from school and brought to a shack by a group of white teenagers and possibly one white adult. They had red hair, tattoos, and dead black bodies in that shack. They brought this boy there to kill him, but he managed to escape, running away without shoes, with torn clothing, having seen weapons and devices shown to torture him. Even white rednecks are doing a better job organizing, technologizing, and strategizing against you. Some will say enough is enough, but many have not yet reached that conclusion. If you have Zuberi and the Maroons of Maa, open up to page 3. If you do not have Zuberi and the Maroons of Maa, order it from Amazon now. The time for pussyfooting and playing games is over. This book is a class of its own, a manual in short form, if you will. And it's no longer about playing games. If you want the injustices done against you to be undone, you must come to an understanding of power. Some of you have not yet reached that understanding, and that is why I put out literature for you. Your job, your task, is to get that literature into your hands and get that literature into the hands of others so that we may begin to do as the mantra proclaims us to do: organize, technologize, and strategize against Africa's invaders. It is not enough to do hashtags. You must read. Chapter 2, page 3. It's called His Son Ahmadi. Zuberi and Dallas sit on a wooden bench overlooking an empty field where 7 children between 1 and 5 years old run around and play. One of the 2-year-olds takes a wooden stick he was holding in his mouth and whacks a 1-year-old in the head. The poor baby cries and walks over to Zuberi with his hands in the air. Do you want Baba to pick you up? Zuberi enunciates each word with an abrupt pause in between. The baby, unresponsive, continues to cry with his arms lifted to his Baba. Zuberi repeats his question, but relents and lifts his son off the ground, standing over Dallas in the process. You have to communicate with your child. I learned that a slow, enunciated narration fosters their language development, and the ancestors know I need my son to develop. Zuberi had not always been a part of the Maa nation. It had a 10-year history in Brooklyn and a longer history in Africa, but Zuberi's membership was only 3 years. He was married for 2 years by then. His mother couldn't love anyone. Dallas stood and placed her hand on the toddler's back. Ahmadi is well loved now, I'm sure. From what I've seen of this community and his Baba, he's in good hands. She smiles while placing her hand in Zuberi's very good hands. Now he is. I am ready now to be a Baba. I wasn't before. His son Ahmadi tries to wriggle out of his arms. Do you want me to put you down? Zuberi slowly enunciates. He puts his son down and watches him play with the other children again. For his sake, I wish I knew. Despite Zuberi's chiseled features and muscular stature, he didn't carry himself as proudly while married. The wrong woman poisons a man. The toxins infest his relationships so that he abuses himself, friends, and family. Ahmadi's speechlessness was collateral for a bad marriage. Moving forward, I want to give this boy more than I had. He will have. This place you chose for him fits the bill, she smiles. It's not enough. I need to show him Africa. Dallas had lived her whole life in Brooklyn. She was already amazed at the Maa nation. She briefly considered how amazing Africa must be, but quickly recalled the jungle, the stray animals, the poverty, and diseases, and said, I think here is enough. Africa has its kings and queens, great men and women past and present, and a story that must be heard on its soil. Dallas couldn't shake the negative image of Africa from her head, and she was completely oblivious to the reality that the kings and queens mentioned were not only ancient but contemporary. She took Zuberi's hand. You're a strong man. Your experiences have made you strong. Zuberi laughs. My sister, character comes from community. It is only because I am in an organization that I can exercise power. If I remained on the outside, but miraculously lived as I do today, chances are I'd be in a casket 6 feet under. The Maa nation is great, but the kingdoms in Africa are even stronger. Well, I like you in Brooklyn, Dallas admitted before kissing the giant on his lips. He wrapped his arms around her and returned a deep kiss. Then he shifted his eyes to Ahmadi and kissed Dallas again. The two stood there with their bodies pressed against each other's. Don't you? He needs a mother, Zuberi reminded, while looking over at Ahmadi. A prepared mother. Dallas turned her head to the side and rested it on Zuberi's broad chest as she rubbed his back up and down. I wish you the best of luck. She enjoined as a long silence came between them. Dallas then opened up. Are you the type to only seek a wife in a woman? Zuberi looks down as Dallas looks up, and he smiles. Not at all. Women are good for more than marrying. Men too, Dallas winks. Yes, physical catharsis is a necessity, Zuberi says as he lowers his hands to Dallas's svelte back. He kisses her gently on the forehead, the nose, then the lips. And trust me, he whispers, as Amadi plays obliviously in the fields. Our experience will be cathartic. We'll go into a commercial.
Greetings, everyone. This is Koku from the Bitter Medicine Podcast, inviting you to tune in to the Bitter Medicine Podcast on KWAZ Radio. Greetings, family. This is Koku, host of the Bitter Medicine Podcast. In case you didn't know, we have an online book club called the Bitter Medicine Book Club. Every month, we will select a book to inspire the Bitter Medicine Podcast listening audience to read along together. At the end of the month, we will have a call-in show and book discussion. This is a great, dynamic way for readers to not only enjoy a book, but also have others to bounce ideas off of. They say if you want to keep anything away from black people, put it in a book. Don't allow this to be true. Head over to bittermedicineblogs.com and subscribe to our newsletter for important updates. Do that today. Join our reading collective today and empower yourselves, your family, and your community. Peace and blessings. You are listening to the Pro-Black Perspective on KWAZ Radio.
Now, as you can see, it was a very, very short chapter, but it was compact. The scene is Dallas and Zuberi from the chapter before in a playground where Amadi is running around playing with other children. Now, look back at what this is. They are in the Maa Nation, okay? A gated community in Brooklyn, right? And the children are able to run around freely. Why? Because there's no danger inside of the forest, if you will. And that's a reflection of the proverb that you can find in the Pro-Black Compendium. On page 37 of the Pro-Black Compendium, you see the African proverb, the family is like the forest. If you are outside, it is dense. If you are inside, you see that each tree has its own position. One of the troubles with us as a people is that in essence, we don't have families. Looking at us from the outside, we are not dense. And if you're inside, none of the trees have a position. We don't have families, we don't have communities. We don't have a nation. The Maa Nation is different. The children have somewhere to be. if you go back to the story of the little boy who was nearly killed, he was kidnapped on his way from the public school system. The school bus dropped him off, and then boys picked him up. White boys picked him up. A white driver, most likely, or maybe a black driver, doesn't matter. But white driver drops him off. White boys pick him up, and you gotta understand why, because they're strategizing for this. They already got 3 bodies under them. They did this before. They did this before, and guess what? They're at large, and you know, black folks sitting on their hands, saying, "When is Whitey gonna solve this?" Don't even want to talk about, you know, a child who was traumatized, or, you know, potentially traumatized. Who knows? And, you know, naturally he shouldn't be traumatized, but, you know, that's the situation we're in. Either way, from what I understand, his mother is talking to somebody else who was saying, "Hey, the police found the shack," and his mother's like, "Did they see the bodies?" Now, real talk. Who should be investigating that shack? Other white people? You understand? You understand? This boy is nearly killed. 3 other people were killed. At least. Because the boy saw 3 bodies. 3 dead bodies. And he smelled them too. And who's investigating it? But you want to be called a community, a nation, a family? The boy's getting dropped off from a white teacher, a white driver, a white bus system, a white whatever. You know, but contrast that to the Maa Nation. You have to understand what your objectives are. This is what Zuberi and the Maroons of Maa is about. It's about your objective. How should the children live? Too many people want to reform this system. They want, let's say, respect. Let's say they want money. Let's say they want quote-unquote power. But they'll still send their kids to where they'll be vulnerable. There's a poem I included. There's a poem I included in the Pro-Black Compendium, page 104. It's "Look for My Ex." I even have it a recording on YouTube, on my other channel. But that's a significant poem, and really, I want to hear you recite that poem. I want to hear you recite that poem. Because it's the difference between you and, let's say, Africans on Cobia. I'll read the poem. "Look for my eggs," said the bird to the man. "They have not developed a way to run." "Look for my eggs," said the bird to the man, "or retire hungry with the setting sun." "Look for my eggs," said the bird to the man, "though no true father would allow you to." "Look for my eggs," said the bird to the man, "you will not find them. I hid them from you." "Look for my eggs," said the bird to the man. There are places too high, too far, too gone. Look for my eggs, said the bird to the man. But now it's too late. They hatched and moved on. Why are your eggs, asked the bird of the man, never hidden from your predator's hand? Yeah, you can clap. It's okay. You're not supposed to clap at an audio or a movie or anything where the artist can't hear you. But you can clap. I'll hear you. Or send me a digital clap on Twitter. But understand that your children are vulnerable. Your children are being kidnapped, killed, molested, brutalized, raped. Anything and everything you can think of. And yet, guess what? They're still vulnerable. Recently, there was talk about white women calling the police on, or their police on black men or black women or whatever. Just calling the police, willy-nilly at random for any reason, right? And guess what? They're supposed to. They're not looking to be vulnerable. They don't know what you're doing around them. If they see a threat, they're going to report it to someone who can take care of it. They don't want to engage with you. They pay taxes to not engage with you and to keep you out of their community, out of their way, out of their environment. They are paying people to keep you under control, and yet you're whining, oh, well, they're calling the police. Of course they're going to. They don't like you. They don't want to like you. They're not paying taxes to like you. And why should they like you? You don't even protect your own kids. Talking about, shoot. Not even gonna say. But let's look at this. Let's look at this chapter. We start off with Zuberi and Dallas, like I said. And there are kids running around and playing in an empty field. Empty field. So every adult can see them. They're in the center. They're in the center. Anybody who wants to can see what's going on with the children. Can see what their after school looks like. They're not commuting by themselves across town, walking by a forest, walking by a road. They're not doing any of that stuff. They're the children. They're in the center of the village, and everybody knows where they're at. And they're surrounded by people who care about them and who care for them, not predators. Not predators. Now the 2-year-old, slaps the other, the 1-year-old on the head. And of course, that's something I saw with my 1-year-old and a friend of ours, 2-year-old. Like, kids just do silly things. It's cool. But I put that there to prepare you. It's nothing huge. It's nothing huge. So a lot of people are not parents, have not been parents, are probably not going to be active parents. Let's face it. But these are the things that it's not a big deal. Don't flip out. Zuberi doesn't, oh man, separate the kids. Let's, what's wrong with this kid? And, let's argue with the other parent. You don't even notice there's other parents here. Because that's another thing too. Zuberi is focusing on two things: Ahmadi, Dallas. You understand? And he's able to do those two things because He's in a community. You know, you have to concern yourself with building a community. Half of the stories that you hear, half of the police brutality stories you hear, right, deal with people outside of their community, outside of a community. I mean, it could be 99%. You know, then of course I explained that, you know, how to talk to the kid. You know, do you want, you know, why are you doing that? Because if you talk too quickly, initially, they're not gonna be able to differentiate the words. You see, because when you hear me, you know what the words are, but to a child, it's just a blend. You know, it's do you want Baba to pick you up? Do you want Baba to pick you up? Right? How do they know if do you is not a word? Do you want Baba? You understand? You gotta space it out. Do you want? And of course you drag it out, enunciate it. You know? And people, and some people know this when they see what they call quote unquote baby talk. But there's a reason for it. And that's why I put in the book. And then look, I said the baby's unresponsive. You understand? And he's physically expressive, you know, putting his arms up. And that's something that you're going to have to expect. You're going to talk to children, or you're going to talk to a newborn or a older child, and they're not going to be responsive. They don't know what you, because like I said, they don't know what the words are. But you say it anyway. You know, and then you oblige them so that they can connect the dots. Like right now, when my son gives me something, he says, "You're welcome." You know, because I taught him to say, you know, thank you and you're welcome. You know, or he might say thank you if I give him something. You know, but that's out of practice. And it's not out of, you know, oh well, they don't understand, because you're gonna be tested with children. You know, it's not as easy as you know you might imagine it if you never had a child. You know, because I came up to, you know, I had a lot of, you know, confidence, a lot of ideas, a lot of, you know, I'm not gonna do this or I'm gonna do that, or, you know, he's gonna be this or that, you know, and it's just, you know, it's like everyone understands. When you want to try something, do it, in a sense, you know. Or let's say go back to the Pro-Black Compendium, and you know, like under the Kemet Proverbs, let's see, we have let's say page 54. By knowing one reaches belief, by doing one gains conviction. When you know, dare. So you technically believe that you can be some, you know, excellent parent, if you will, but you have to do it to know it. You understand? But again, you know, we go back into Zuberi, and, you know, a truism comes through. You know, because Zuberi is written to tell you the truth. You know, the wrong woman poisons a man. And those toxins infest his relationships so that he abuses himself, friends, and family. And then there's collateral for a bad marriage. So very important it is that when you get into relationships, you cannot, especially if you're going to marry them, you cannot be with the person you do not want in totality. You have to be thorough in your evaluation of the person you want to be with, because the stress that they give you will mess you up, or the things you do to avoid that stress or avoid them or whatever will mess you up. Again, we go back to the ancient wisdom. You know, I just want to give you guys the page number. Leave those in error who love their errors. And that would be page 49. Leave those in error who loves their errors. You should not be with someone who you find erroneous. If you're not emotionally invested, it's okay. But make sure you stay emotionally uninvested. So if it's a one-night stand, if it's a fling, if it's a, booty call that's strictly a booty call, then sure, because you're not going to be stressed otherwise. But anyhow, their errors get to you. Anyhow, you're in a relationship where their errors will get to you. Leave, because otherwise you'll mess yourself up. So, continuing on Zuberi says, I need to show Amadi Africa. And Dallas has this weird imagination regarding Africa. Jungle, stray animals, poverty, diseases. And she's supposed to have that idea if she's been miseducated in the public school systems or whatever. She's supposed to have that idea. Just like this boy's mother is supposed to want the police to fix her problems. You understand? Marcus Garvey says if you don't teach people to do better, then you can't hold them accountable for doing better. What we tend to do is we tend to put on to other people, hey, look, you got to be this way. But again, that's not what it's about. Don't expect others to be right. You be right. And you find people and you make them right. You understand? Zuberi says, hey, look, there are kings and queens, great men and women, past and present, in Africa. The present idea is not something that's present to us. Not to say there aren't great people in Africa. We know there are. But when I say kings and queens here, we're talking about real African nationalism. The idea that we need to start installing kings and queens, or start having kings and queens in Africa. Like real kings, real queens. Real people wielding power, wielding armies, wielding leadership. That's what we need. And that's the world that Zuberi exists in. It's not this world where the incidents that you read about, hear about, are what's going on. Where, let's say, the leader of a certain nation is just taking money from the lower classes of Africa, and the lower classes are just whining about it. That's not the world that Zuberi lives in, because that's not a revolutionary world. It's not a revolutionary existence. That's not a way for us to live. Zuberi spells it out when Dallas says, "You're a strong man, and your experiences have made you strong," and that's the trouble right there. That's not how it goes. That's not how it goes. And Zuberi explains that. He says, character comes from community. Again, we tend to think, hey, why are these people not strong? Like, why are we looking back? Why are we just filming? Because character comes from community. And it's only because Zuberi is in an organization that he can exercise power. You understand? He's powerful because he's organized. He's not powerful on his own. And if he was somehow like he is, but outside of the Maa Nation, if he was in our world today, right now, he'd be 6 feet under. And that's another thing to regard too. You know, Zuberi is this amazing, great character, right? But looks like I skipped it above. He was only in the Maa Nation for 3 years. And he had a life before then. But now, after being in a program, if you will, or in a community, then he's this strong, respectable character that you see before you. You know? Who knows what's in store for Dallas if she stays around? Well, the whole point is that somebody somewhere did something so that now you got these Zuberis. It's like you know, you might give my podcast to somebody, and then 5 years down the line, 5 years down the road, they're one of the most spectacular, amazing people you ever come across. Even if they weren't before then. And that's the whole point. You do and you work for the future, not the present. Not the present. For the future. Zuberi was the future. He wasn't the founder of the Maa Nation or whatever is going on in Africa. He wasn't the founder. Too many of you expect everybody to be the founder. No, you be the founder. And then people will catch up. Or not. Well, the reality is that whether they catch up or not, you now have something. You now have something. You have power. So anyway, Dallas continues to flirt. And that's something that a lot of us don't understand. You know, men and women flirt. And you gotta play that game. Some people don't understand that. So I spell it out in Zuberi. Now, of course, I go into more detail on how to charm people in the Pro-Black Compendium. But just looking at Zuberi and his character, that's enough. That's enough. But also understand, what are Zuberi's priorities? He says, look, I'm looking for a mother for Amadi, and she has to be a prepared mother. So he's saying he's not looking to date outside his community. Or he's not looking to marry outside of his community. He already did that once. It didn't work. And that's the thing right there. You want to bring people up to speed. If they aren't already up to speed. You want them to be a part of a community, and you want to be thorough. Like I said, you want to be thorough. He just met Dallas. And he knows she's not on par. He knows she's not there. He knows she can't. For instance, she can't. Let's say you're in a relationship with someone, right? Can you name your child Shaka with just anybody? Not that you'd want to name your child Shaka, but just saying, could you give them an African name? Can you name them Nzinga? Can you name them Hatshepsut? Can you name them Omawali? No. But this is important. What you name your progeny is important. But you got to be thorough. You have to have already had this conversation. How many children are you having? What are their names? Where will you live? How will they be educated? What are their plans for the future? You might think, hey, well, let them decide on their own. You know, your partner might think, hey, well, we need to engage them in a family business. You gotta have that already decided. When you're marrying, you have to have these things clarified. Don't figure that out in the process, because a dispute between two parents who technically have equal authority, especially if you don't establish otherwise, you're gonna have a problem. You're gonna have a problem. And again, you're not gonna know what's right. You might say, hey, look, I'm not gonna have any immunizations, and then the state is gonna say, the white state is gonna tell you, look, you're gonna have to get these at minimum. Who knows? Or you might say, hey, look, I want my child to be vegan. And then your child's going to say, actually, I got a good taste for, But going forward, Dallas doesn't rebuff him like, oh, you want a repaired mother? She says, I wish you the best of luck. But are you the type to only seek a wife and a woman? And Zuberi says not at all. And that's what it is too. It's like, if you understand how to date, you can have some fun before you're married. You understand? And that's what the conversation's about. And it's about the physical catharsis. Being sexual is fun and healthy. Don't be too serious about, oh man, I gotta get married. Because again, you don't even, especially if you don't have any experience, you don't know. There's certain things you should know about yourself before you try to complete yourself. You understand? Know be co. Know thyself, be thyself, complete thyself. And I have that on page 213, under relationship advice for the civil African. But the whole idea is that love will come to complete you. First know, then be yourself. But figure yourself out. And in the meantime, while you're discovering yourself, or while you're looking around for different partners, have fun. Don't not have fun. Because you can always mess up. I'm gonna hit you with another commercial.
Greetings, everyone. This is Koku from the Bitter Medicine Podcast, inviting you to tune in to the Bitter Medicine Podcast on KWAZ Radio.
When will African people have basic rights? When will we be protected? When will our cost of living be eliminated? When will our cultures be preserved? We need a new leadership. One that has studied the problems and learned the solutions. The Pro-Black Compendium is the book to start off that leadership. Quotations, essays, poems, stories, codes of conduct, curricula, principles, relationship advice, marketing tips, group economics, games, book clubs, movie nights, chronologies, civilizations, wars, warriors, authors, songs, conflict resolution. The list goes on. There is no book more necessary for starting our people on the path to African redemption.
You are listening to the Pro-Black Perspective on KWAZ Radio.
It is fundamental you have to understand what conditions you are under and why you are under those conditions. What's more, what you need to strive toward. Zuberi is the book that shows you what you need to strive toward. Not too many books are letting you know. Because it's not enough to say organize. Because what are you organizing? Or what are you organizing for? Now, of course, organize against Africa's invaders is important. But after the invaders are gone, what's left? What are we forming? Right now, Africa's leaders are going to Europe for medical treatment or sending their children to schools in Europe or even America. What kind of future do you think they are building? What does independence mean? These are the questions and answers in Zuberi and the Maroons of Maa. I know that you heard how layered it is. We're talking about children, parenting, relationships, power, community, the realities of our situation, the concepts of men and women, accountability. We're talking about all of that in roughly 2 pages of a short book, small book. Get a copy. This is compact wisdom. This is wisdom that can be told and taught to a child, to an adult, to an elder. It's not your, okay, we're going to talk about, we have war and let's form an organization This organization is going to have some sort of structure. You know? What is that? To what? To what end? We don't even know what we want to build. How can we build it? Think about that. We need to get on a page. Because our children are being hunted. Our eggs are in front of our predators. We're under attack. Even a little group of white boys can kill African people, while African people do nothing. 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 If you haven't already, purchase Zuberi and the Maroons of Maa on Amazon. Read the book, leave a review, and promote it on your social media. I want to hear you all reading the poem, Look for My Eggs. That's in the Pro-Black Compendium. I want to hear y'all putting out your favorite quotes from Zuberi. I want to see it all. Engage me on social media. I'm there. I'm talking. I'm listening. And make sure you check out the Bitter Medicine Book Club. But until we speak again, Shemi Emotep, Uncle Ja, Seneb Neb, Amen, Ma'at, Duaneche. Thank you for listening. I invite you to join hands with your brothers and sisters as we recite the African affirmation together. It's a call and response, so follow my lead. We are an African people, robbed from our homeland, robbed of our names, our languages, our cultures, our religions, our womanhood, our manhood, our sisterhood, our brotherhood, our motherhood, our fatherhood, our selfhood, our nationhood, and our self-respect. But we shall rise, never to fall again. Up, you mighty race. You can accomplish what you will. No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace.